Okay, let's dive into this explainer and completely dismantle a concept you probably thought you had a pretty good handle on: your own memory. If you're like most of us, you've got this very specific, almost mechanical idea of how remembering actually works, right? But the fascinating research we're unpacking today argues we've basically got it all backward. And figuring out why might just completely change how you view your own mind, your history, and, well, your future.
So let's kick things off with a question inspired by Angela's Explainer, which is this beautifully simplified companion guide from our source material. Ask yourself, is your brain really just a biological hard drive? Like, is it just this dusty old backpack stuffed with faded pictures, outdated passwords, and those random embarrassing moments that your brain likes to project at 2 a.m. for absolutely no reason? We almost always talk about memory as a place where we keep things, a literal container. The universally accepted myth is that memory is just stored data, kind of like a dusty file cabinet sitting in the back of your mind. But the totally mind-bending reality presented in this paper is that memory is actually the past continuously shaping and bossing the future around. It's not the past just sitting quietly in a box somewhere. It's the past actively dictating what can happen to you next. Which brings us to section 1, the storage myth. To really wrap our heads around this, we've got to look at exactly why we fell into this trap of believing memory is some sort of mental attic. The core argument here is this phrase: storage is a local way of preserving relational constraint. Now, think of a lunchbox. Storage is literally just the lunchbox. But we've become so completely obsessed with explaining the hinges and the plastic of that box that we completely forgot the sandwich inside is the only thing that actually matters. Storage is useful, sure, whether it's a spiral notebook or a massive hard drive, but the storage itself isn't the memory. The memory is what that stored information forces you to do tomorrow. There's this fantastic mini narrative about Margaret Hamilton that beautifully illustrates how this works in practice. She played the Wicked Witch of the West. She noted that children see her terrifying green face first, right? That is a memory. But later, if they're lucky, they learn about the incredibly gentle woman behind the makeup. They don't just hit delete on the memory of the Green Witch. Instead, they reweight that memory to understand that acting isn't reality. The memory changes purely because its meaning for their future changes. Moving on to section 2, how memory became data.
Let's actually trace how humanity was tricked into thinking the brain is just a fancy filing cabinet. We can track this historical inversion starting way back in the 4th century BC. Back then, Aristotle saw memory as an active temporal relation. Older biblical texts treated it as faithful participation and action. Fast forward to 1690, and John Locke ties memory to a stored inner identity. And finally, in the 1940s, Alan Turing and John von Neumann gave us computer architecture. We literally went from seeing memory as an active, lived relation to an internal psychological mechanism, and finally, just stored data in machines. The metaphor of the computer was so incredibly successful that we just accidentally applied it to ourselves.
Section 3, the real definition.
So, if memory isn't a hard drive, what exactly is it? Well, here is the formal definition from the paper: persistent, weighted, relational constraint that modifies future participation. Now, don't let the academic jargon scare you off. This simply means that if you touch a hot stove, your hand doesn't stop to write a tiny detailed essay about it to file away under kitchen events. It simply changes your future behavior so you don't do it again, like a tiny chaos goblin. The relation, the burn, modifies your future participation. Simple as that. And the author's formal theory proves, with total academic authority, that memory isn't just some quirky psychological trick. It is a living, breathing mechanism across all domains. Whether we're talking about biology, human culture, or artificial systems, the fundamental structure of remembering remains exactly the same. Let's break that theory down into a quick recipe. Step 1, a relation occurs. Step 2, a change happens to the participant. Step 3, that change persists. Step 4, it gets weighted. And step 5, the future is modified. Now, step 4 is absolutely the secret ingredient here. Our brains have standards, you know? You don't remember every single blank wall you walked past today. You only assign weight to the things that are actually going to matter for your future survival, your identity, and your participation in the world.
This leads perfectly into section 4, memory beyond the brain. Now we can zoom out and realize that memory is literally everywhere in nature. Looking at this massive scale shows us exactly what we mean. You have DNA remembering how to build bodies, immune systems remembering germs so they can fight them off faster next time, tree rings adjusting to ecological paths, even algorithms tweaking their weights. These are all forms of memory shaping the future. None of these are brains sitting around feeling nostalgia by a fireplace. They are physical systems preserving a past relation to shape exactly what happens next.
We even see this clear distinction in the realm of artificial intelligence. A text file just sitting inertly on a hard drive, that's just storage. But it transforms into functional memory the exact moment an AI retrieves that data and uses it to actively change its output. It isn't truly memory until it bosses the system's future responses around.
And finally, Section 5, Healing and Reweighting. We absolutely have to bring this revolutionary theory back down to the deeply human level of trauma and forgiveness. The paper states something profound. Trauma is not merely stored pain. It is a constraint on future accessibility. Think about that. When we experience something terrible, it heavily weights our future. Trust, safety, even a good night's sleep becomes so much harder to access because the brain is basically screaming that the world is dangerous. It's not just a bad file sitting in your head. It is an active, heavy constraint on your future action. But just like those kids eventually learning the truth behind Margaret Hamilton's green face, we too can reweight our scary past relations as we gain new understanding. We don't erase the past, we integrate it. The scary witch becomes a nuanced, talented actor. The trauma becomes wisdom or a powerful testimony. We're reweighting the importance of that event based on our new, safer environment. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that healing isn't about deleting files. It's about reweighting the future. Forgiveness and healing do not mean erasing what happened to you. They mean reorganizing the weight of that event so the wound no longer gets to drive the car. You don't ever have to pretend the pain didn't happen. You simply strip it of its power to dictate your next move. I'll leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. If memory isn't just a dusty old box of the past, but rather a dynamic bridge that is actively designing your future right this second, what are you carrying across? What past relations are currently bossing your future around, and which ones is it time to finally reweight?